Hello and welcome to the F1 Rearview podcast. Before we get into the episode today, I just want to put a quick disclaimer at the start that I and everyone else here at the F1 Rearview podcast, Ruth and Reese, support BLM and everything that it stands for and everyone that stands with it. Hello and welcome to the F1 Rearview podcast, and it has been a while since I've said that. 217 days we have waited, and what a way it was to come back, and what a race we came back to. I'm joined today, as always, by the wonderful Reese Keeble. Hello, Reese.
Hello, Tom.
And of course,
been a long time no see.
Yeah, and of course we've got producer Ruth on here as well.
Hello.
And as I'm sure you've probably noticed by now, we've also got video for today. For the first time ever on the F1 Review podcast, we are doing this on Microsoft Teams. Shout out to Teams for hosting us today. We're not sponsored. They don't really deserve a shout out at all. So please excuse any bad connections, anyone talking over anyone else, because we're not in the same room. We can't tell like we normally would be able to. So it will be a bit messy, but we're confident to get it going.
Normally in the same room, I'm sat there like a fish, so Tom knows I need to talk. I'm like,
yeah. That's how it normally happens. We should get cameras in the actual studio when we're back in the actual studio, so they can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the studio apartment, isn't it?
It will be.
Yeah. The studio flat.
I'd also like to reference, if I keep looking over here and not at the cameras, because that's where their faces are for me. They're off to the right. So if I keep looking over that, I'm looking at Reese and Ruth. That's what's happening there. Just in case you were wondering why I kept doing that. Anyway, we've had a race, guys. It's been, as I said before, 217 days, and what a race to come back to.
Yes.
It was. We had what, 11 finishes, 9 DNFs, and only one person finished outside the points.
Yeah.
Williams almost got a point.
Williams almost got a
point.
On his debut, almost got a point.
And
3
how
safety
harsh
cars.
Would that have been on Russell?
It was insane.
If Latifi would have got that point, not Russell, how harsh would that have been on Russell?
Oh, he would have been horrible.
Yeah.
He would have been crying.
So I reckon we start off today's podcast with a little bit of a review of the race. Let's just kind of each give it a score out of 10 and give like a sentence of why you think it deserves that score. Reese, you want to go first?
Yes, I would like to give it a steady 11.
11? You're going over the out of 10 mark.
Just because I don't play by the rules, obviously. Just because it was the first race back, and I missed F1. And to be fair, if I was judging it like it was in mid-season, I'd probably go 9. However, it was the first race back. We had 9 DNFs. There was tyres, just doing one and just get off the car. There was engine failures. There was Max Verstappen trying to bump start his car halfway around. There was Lando Norris on the podium. I mean, that deserves a 15. So it was a very good race for me. I was shouting, celebrating, drinking quite a lot of alcohol to celebrate the first podium for Lando Norris.
It definitely was very exciting and a very exciting way to start the season. That's for sure. Ruth, what would you give it out of 10?
I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh, solid. Okay.
Yeah, pretty solid one. I enjoyed the race. There was a lot happening, stuff going on every single lap. Very interesting.
I think I'd give it I think I'll give it a 9 as well. I mean, there was potential for more. I think it was disappointing to see that Mercedes are as far ahead as we thought they were. They are going to absolutely dominate this season, I think. And, we didn't really get to see Red Bull going full at it like I think we could have done. That's old strategy for Max. If he could have finished that race, would definitely have been very interesting to see. But either way, it was a cracker of a race. 3 safety cars, 11 DNFs, 11 finishes, 9 DNFs even, I should say. Yeah, great race.
I think what made the race so interesting was the fact that Mercedes had a fault. And they were having to look after the gearboxes and not ride the curb.
Yeah,
which was obviously going to hinder the lap time quite a bit. And if Lewis wasn't a sore loser, as Alex said over the team radio, I reckon Alex would have took the first position.
Well, we'll get on to talking more about Alex.
Potential.
And we'll talk a bit more about the Alex and Lewis kind of incident a bit later on in the podcast. We'll start off kind of going through the big things that happened though, and we'll start off in qualifying. I think that's the best place to start it all off. And let's just talk about Bottas. I think needs some credit for this weekend because he did actually put in a very good weekend. He was really good. Great qualifying lap. Mowed the grass a bit as well. Found time for some side jobs. And went and won that race. I think he definitely, that race wasn't an easy win for him, even though it looked like it should have been, and it was start to finish for him in first place. He had to work for that.
Bottas is definitely showing all the haters that are like, "Oh, Sebastian should get the seat." He's like, "Why? I've just qualified first, finished the race first. What more do you want?"
Well, I mean, I think it's up to him now to realise that if there's a season he's going to win, this is probably it. I mean, he's got he's only 8 races confirmed so far. If no more are added, that's a very short amount of time. He needs to maximise what he does. But qualifying, Bottas did that phenomenal lap, put it on first. But let's also talk about who put it on 4th place, Lando Norris. Another person who's had an incredible weekend. He put it on 4th in that McLaren. People were saying that McLaren maybe not be the 4th fastest car this year. It could be the Racing Point, but yeah, Lando has absolutely proved it there, hasn't he?
I'm not gonna lie. I was sat here watching it, and I was watching the lap times because I have the F1 app as well. So I was sat there watching Lando fly around, and I was like, "He's gonna do it. He's gonna put it in 4th. He's gonna put it in 4th." And I was like, "No, he can't. He can't. The Racing Point looks faster. It looks faster. No, he's in 4th." It was a roller coaster of emotions this weekend.
It really was.
It was really close as well on qualifying because Bottas's lap was 1.2939, but Lando's was 1.3626. And then obviously Albon and Perez had the same lap, but Albon did it first, so he got that place. But everyone was really close together in terms of performance, which was nice to see.
Yeah, it was really close, especially in that Q1. I was looking at all the Q1, the top 12 cars were separated by like 6/10, which was so refreshing to be able to see that. I think the most controversial part of qualifying, though, was definitely right at the end when like we mentioned, Bottas went off to mow the grass and the yellow flags came out. Hamilton didn't lift. And it was at the end of Saturday, the FIA came out saying that's not a penalty. But as we all know, Sunday morning came around and some new footage came to light that proved Hamilton did go through a yellow flag and didn't lift, and he did get that 3-place grid job. What do we think there? Do we think that was a fair penalty or what?
It was really interesting how they found it to be a penalty and how Red Bull decided to pursue it, because they waited for the 360 camera to come off the car to get uploaded to the social media so that they could go around it on the social media. And because of them uploading it to their own social media, they were able to see Hamilton fly past the yellow flag.
Yes, this is something Ted mentioned on his notebook yesterday, that Red Bull actually took the F1's Instagram feed to the FIA and said, hang on, that literally proves he's guilty. But the FIA didn't have that footage when they made the original decision, which is why he was declared innocent, because there was some yellow-green flags kind of mixed up. So do we all think that he deserved that 5-second penalty then? Did he illegally go through that yellow flag, or do you think it was a bit hit and miss?
I think if the yellow flag was clear, like it was on that video, then the penalty is deserved. You have to apply the rules fairly to everyone. You can't pick and choose when you apply it. So if there's a yellow flag and you can see that on the video, then it should be a penalty.
I 100% agree as well, because I think that it's a case of maybe Lewis trying to push his name a little bit too much and get away with a little bit too more. Maybe he's a bit threatened by Bottas. I don't know, but he's doing more riskier things than he would have done a couple of years ago, like not lifting for a yellow and hoping to get away with it.
Definitely.
But then again, you could also argue the point that he just didn't see it. But
it was literally in the corner of his vision, and there was the dust on the track from Bottas going off. There's a lot of kind of things, but like Ruth says, if there's a rule, you've got to stick to it. You can't penalise Verstappen in Mexico last year for not lifting and not penalised Hamilton. You need to make it fair. Everyone needs to get penalised if they've done the same thing.
At the end of the day, it's not about who the driver is either. It's about the safety of racing and all being the same and making sure that nothing happens that's dangerous or could be dangerous. The reason the yellow flag was there was because there was a hazard on the track. So, I mean, you can look at it both ways, but if there's a hazard on track, everyone should lift off. That's just, I don't know, that's just my opinion on it.
Well, either way, that penalty was applied. He did get a 3-place grid drop, taking him from 2nd down to 5th. And that promoted Verstappen to 2nd, Norris to 3rd, and Albon to 4th, I think it was, yeah. Norris to 3rd in the qualifying was the best qualifying McLaren have had since 2016
Was it Norris to 3rd? I thought it was Albon to 3rd.
No, it was Norris.
No.
Norris qualified 4th, and that got promoted to 3rd.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, because it was Verstappen who was alongside Norris, and Norris caught up with him.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. It's because Verstappen wasn't in the race that long. I just thought I didn't even.
He went out quite quick.
Well, yeah, let's have a talk about that then. So that was the first big thing of the race, really. It was quite early on, wasn't it, that Verstappen had this kind of technical fault. I think it was the electrics weren't working properly or something, and the engine just kept going into anti-stall. Really disappointing for him. He's obviously won in Austria the last 2 times. I think he was definitely up there for winning it today. I think if he'd have pulled off the right strategy, he definitely could have done it. What do we think there?
I think what you mentioned about the strategy is correct, but also would it have played a part? Because there was that many safety cars that obviously he was doing the harder tyre, which was the medium tyre, into the soft tyre, whereas everyone else was doing the soft into the hard.
Yeah.
Would that have played a factor because of all the safety cars?
True, you could say the safety cars would have just kind of null and voided it, when I think, to be honest, you're probably right. But whether or not Verstappen would have maybe been in the same position Albon was, going on to those softs, would he have made it work better than Albon did? It's, it's all questions, isn't it?
I think it was last year at the same race he did a really good undertake. I'm not sure who he did it on, but that was after a safety car, and he would have had every opportunity to do the same. It's just a shame that he didn't get to show that. And
that was
obviously,
the one with Charles Leclerc, wasn't it?
I think it was Leclerc, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really good one, but it's a shame he just didn't get to this time.
Max drives this circuit so well. He does know it really well. And that's all. I'm almost glad that we're coming back again next week to do the same race again, because he'll come back with a vengeance. He'll want to win that race next weekend, and he'll make sure he does, because this is kind of his home GP now that Zandvoort has been delayed another year.
Oh, I was just going to say that the car sounded like my car when I tried to put it in reverse. I've got a 2005 Fiesta, and it sounded absolutely awful. It was like, I was like, he's not getting that back. And you could see him literally shuffling, pushing, trying to dump it, like trying to get it going.
Yeah.
And he did twice. Then he took it into the pits. He waited around for a little bit. Then he managed to get it out of not out of the pit lane, but out of his box.
Yeah.
And
stalled again.
Yeah, just sadly it wasn't to be.
It was very unfortunate for Max, and I think it was just a bit of a dire weekend for Red Bull altogether. It's definitely one to forget. Albon obviously retiring later on in the race with another issue. Do we know what that issue was? Was it a power unit issue, or was it the same issue?
I don't think they've confirmed what the issue is. I think it's not related to what happened with Hamilton, but it's also not the same issue that Verstappen had. So I haven't really seen anything about what the actual issue was, just that it's a completely different issue.
I think with all these issues going on, absolute credit to Christian Horner for still going on, speaking to Sky, talking about the weekend. Every time they wanted a little update, Crofty would hand over to Christian, and Christian would give the update, even though the race wasn't going his way. Like, massive, take my hat off for him. That's good.
Great sportsmanship.
Kind of been a nice thing to do, definitely, yeah.
I have to say, one thing that I found really interesting was with the Haas, both of them had that braking issue. And at first, when I think it was Magnussen who went out first, and at first you just see him go flying straight through the gravel, and everyone was wondering what had happened. But then the same thing happened later on, and everyone realised that it was a braking issue. But it's just crazy to think how fast they're going through all of those corners and how fast they're going to try and keep the pace, and their brakes weren't working at all.
I think the issue with Magnussen was that it wasn't gravel. Like, he was just going on a tarmac runoff, and obviously it was his front right brake disc, I think, that failed.
I think he said both in the end, but just went.
Right. But I was going to say, at the end of the day, when you're hurtling towards the corner at that speed, your brakes don't work. You've got no gravel to slow you down. It's just a runoff track.
Yeah.
He did. I ended up looking away. Like, I thought, this is going to be nasty. This is going to be really nasty. But luckily, he managed to kick his back end out, and that's what ultimately slowed him down.
That's it. To be honest, hats off for that. That was some quick thinking. He knew he didn't have the brakes. He just flicked the steering wheel, managed to put himself into a bit of a pirouette that honestly would have saved a massive accident. He definitely saved himself quite a lot of harm there. And I think we do need to say, Haas, let's have a look at them this season because they aren't looking good. I think they might have fallen below Williams for potentially the worst car of the season.
Gene Haas has just committed to them and everything. And Gunter, can you see Gunter in a job this time next year?
I don't know if it's Gunter to blame. The blame can't. To be honest, I'm going to say no. I can't see Gunter in a job next year, and I can't see any of the Haas crew in a job next year. What if Haas got as incentives to stay? If I was Gene Haas, I'd pull the plug. It's not worth it. He's losing money on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing to remember with all of the F1 teams as well is that constantly it's all of the team working together. It's not just on a driver or on a specific person. It's the whole team, and the whole team suffers when stuff like this happens, which is just a shame. So.
Yeah, you say that though, but when you've got two drivers like Magnussen and Grosjean, more aimed towards Grosjean this, but when you've got the two drivers that are probably the most hated on the grid because they get given too many opportunities and get let off for too much, you've got to say that there is quite a bit of driver fault on that. Like if you look at, was it Australia last year, or was it the year before, where they were very up there in the top 10, collided wheels, and then that was their fault and took them both out the race and stopped Haas from getting the best finish that they would have got, that they would have ever had now.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. The same can be said for the Red Bulls when it was Verstappen and Ricciardo, and they did the same thing. They were fighting and, they accidentally both collided.
Yeah, well,
then Red Bull learned from that though, and they didn't get rid of, but they let Ricciardo leave. They learned from that. They learned that they were going to clash heads, whereas Haas haven't.
I think Haas are in a position though where it's gonna cost them so much to change drivers. It's not really worth it. They know that Grosjean knows how to drive the car. They know he can do the job. He's reasonably cheap. If they brought in another driver like Hulkenberg, for example, that's going to cause more issues because he's already got an issue with Magnussen. He's already not good friends with Magnussen. They're going to have to retrain him on their simulator. It's a big process and they can't really afford it in the first place, and I think they're just holding out for the new regulations to come in, the cost cap to come in, and hoping that is going to bring them some good fortune in Formula One because this season they may as well just write it off.
I think that cost gap will make such a big difference between how the race works.
Yeah.
Because it'll definitely make the races more interesting because everyone's more likely to have a good fight each race rather than it always be dominated by one person.
Yeah. I was going to say, in my opinion, they should have probably acted on at least one of the drivers, if not both, by now. Because if I had an F1 team and my drivers weren't getting along, both the drivers would be gone. It doesn't matter. Say if I'm like Gene Haas and I've got hundreds of millions, I want my F1 team to perform. Why aren't they performing? It's the drivers. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
Gunter showed that he's a good team principal. Gunter is a very good team principal, but the drivers just aren't doing him justice.
Yeah, there is something there that needs to be looked at and something needs to come to fruition about what they can do. But if I was Gene Haas, I wouldn't. He's already said he's not confident about going forward with the team. I think he's very much close to just pulling the plug on it, which is unfortunate. And you don't want to see a team leave the grid. But obviously, if it's not working for him, it's not working for him, is it?
Nope. Not at all.
The other person I think we should talk about that did not perform very well in that race at all is Sebastian Vettel and the Ferraris in general. Actually, let's talk about those Ferraris first. Where have they gone?
Well, I think they're still in Italy, to be fair, mate. I've not got a clue.
I genuinely think those Ferraris are probably the 5th fastest car on the grid right now. I'd put them below Racing Point and below McLaren. I think they are the 5th fastest car. They are not there. And to be honest, hats off to Charles Leclerc to be able to drag that thing up to second. He did a great job there. He actually did a very good race. I know, obviously, if you look at the podium, you see Leclerc in second. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. But you look at what he's done. There it is. Yeah. You look at what he's done. You look at what Leclerc's done. He did very well in that race to get it to second.
Leclerc said that his second felt like a victory.
Well, it should do.
How much he had to rest the car. Sorry, did you get that?
Yeah, you're frozen
Hello.
a little bit there.
Sorry, I was saying that Leclerc said that his second place felt like a victory, which shows you how much they had to wrestle the car and how much he had to deal with, and how much that pure driving talent kicked in. Because Vettel's back in 10th. He literally secured 1 point. But you expect it to go Mercedes, Ferrari, like if we're being honest, then Red Bull, and then you're lucky if you get like a McLaren or a Racing Point.
Seb literally finished ahead of one driver, and that driver was Nicholas Latifi in his first ever Formula One race.
And even then, he was looking sketchy.
Yeah, you don't want to. Like, obviously, he had the spin, which set him back a bit, but he still should have improved on 10th place. He got 1 point. Like, he's a 4-time world champion. You know he can do better. Why is he making these mistakes? And he's not advertised himself well. No one's going to give him a. Ferrari have already dropped him. No one else is going to give him a seat next year if he keeps driving like that.
I feel like he just.
Sorry, go on.
Say again, Reece.
No, carry on.
I was going to say, why did he shove his nose in against Sainz? That was the first mistake that he made, and he never recovered from it. They were both going around the corner. Sainz clearly had the racing line. He had the right to pull into the corner the way he did. And like I know everyone was saying about Lewis leaving a car's gap, but he didn't have to do that when Vettel was doing it, because Vettel wasn't in an overtaking position.
He was way too far back to make that move, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sainz was just taking the corner like he normally would. Vettel decided to put his nose in for some reason and then span. Like, come on.
Yeah, I think Sainz is actually very lucky that he didn't actually make proper contact with him and have a puncture or anything from it, because that would have been Sainz's race over if it did. Vettel he needs to do something. It's just not working for him, and I don't know why. I don't know. I think this is the end for him. I can't see him going anywhere after this season apart from out.
I think
I don't think anyone's going to give him a seat. I don't.
I think he's not. He's just enjoying the races now. He's not really doing it from a standpoint of I want to be another world champion, because he's not got the car to do it. He knows he's not got the car to do it. He very clearly is just racing.
I wouldn't say he's enjoying the races, because he's having like a little. You know what I mean? Like he's throwing a strop every race, essentially. Yeah. That's what he did when he shoved his nose in. He was throwing a strop. He was like, I shouldn't be this far back. I'm going to get forward. And then that's what caused him.
You can't even argue that spin ruined his race, because after that spin, there was like another. I think all the safety cars came after that. So he closed back up to the pack.
30-odd laps. It was at least 30-odd laps left.
Yeah, and he closed right back up to the pack. He was with the pack. Like any normal 4-time world champion would be cutting through that pack. If he had a massive gap, fair enough, because of that spin, but he didn't, and he can't use that as an excuse.
He was driving like I would expect Latifi to be driving, being the rookie.
Yeah.
Not being a 4-time world champion. He was after that like little spin. I reckon he was just being too cautious, and that's why we didn't get him so far up, because he didn't want to humiliate himself, essentially.
Maybe he's just waiting for the upgrades to come, because he knows that he's not got the car at the moment. But when that happens, maybe he'll be able to have the pace and have enough to be able to do those moves like he tried to do on Sainz, but he didn't have.
Well,
maybe that's why he's hanging back a bit.
Yeah, I think Ferrari needs us to hope that this is a circuit-specific issue, and that actually come when they go to Hungary in 2 races' time, they'll be much more on it. But I'm not optimistic for them.
How did Ferrari do last year at the circuit?
They were challenging for the win. They were challenging for the win.
Not 1-2. I meant like it was Verstappen then Leclerc.
Yeah. You look at the times. There was a really interesting stat that came out from qualifying that Ferrari last year did a 103, pretty much exactly, I think, with Leclerc. This year they did a 103.9. They're 9/10 slower than they were last year. How do you make an engine that's slower?
See, Ferrari are 9/10 slower, and Racing Point are 9/10 faster. Exactly. Williams are 7/10 faster.
Yeah.
Renault are 4/10, McLaren 4/10, AlphaTauri 3/10, Mercedes 3/10, and then it's just Red Bull 300ths. To be fair, like there's not really much in that. But then it's Haas on 6/10, Ferrari 9/10. The only one that's beating Ferrari is Alfa Romeo, and that's over a second.
Yeah, it's like they've most of the teams, Honda, Renault, Mercedes, have taken a step forward. Ferrari have taken a step backwards. They've got worse. And I don't know, and I'm not going to say anything here, but it might be linked to that kind of illegal engine that they rumoredly had last year that the FIA sort of swept under the carpet. Maybe that engine was only as good as it was because it was illegal, and now they've taken the illegal bits off. It's a bit of a dog. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I remember in Q3 last time, Vettel had a issue with this car, didn't he? And he wasn't able to do Q2 or Q3, I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
So maybe it's just...
This
Yeah,
this
that was
time was the first time that Vettel went out without having an issue. It was just driver fault.
Yeah.
I remember Crofty
Yeah.
saying that. It was the first time that he didn't make it to Q3 without there being a car issue. It was literally just driver fault.
Yeah.
Maybe the cars just aren't able to keep up. They just can't compete with...
Well, yeah. Leclerc managed to drag it to second somehow, but I don't know. Ferrari, they need to have something look at it, and obviously it's something we'll touch on in the later weeks more, because we've only got one race to go off of at the moment, and I do hope they improve. As much as I don't, as much as I'm not a Ferrari fan, it's not nice to see a team like Ferrari dropping that far back. They should be at the front of the grid. They are Ferrari. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens next week when we've got all 20 drivers back on the grid, and hopefully all finishing the race, because then we can get a real feel for, how well Leclerc's driving, how well Vettel's driving, all of these things,
Definitely.
I feel like you can't get true results without majority of the drivers actually driving. It's hard to tell what's actually going on when you've got so many non-finishers.
You could argue that Vettel got a better finish because 9 guys didn't finish.
Oh, definitely. He would have been out of the points if most of those cars finished. Yeah.
He would have finished at 15th if he's lucky, I reckon.
Yeah.
That's
the only people that I reckon, genuinely, the only people that I reckon would have been behind him would have been your 2 Williams and your 2 Alphas. And that's, I reckon everyone else would have been past him. He lost his head.
We didn't mention this at the top. We didn't mention this at the top when we were talking about qualifying. Shout out to Russell. He was like 2 thousandths off getting off into Q2. Shout out to Russell. He's doing bits in that Williams, and I hope he does do well this season.
I really think the Williams looked really, really good too before he went out. I mean, obviously Latifi, it's his rookie season, so he did finish 11th. But I have to say Russell looked really, really good in the Williams, and he looked like he was driving really well. Yeah,
definitely. Right, the next thing that happened in that race, that was after Vettel's spin and all that kind of stuff happened, Kimi's wheel decided it wanted to have its own race. It went flying off. Can I say, how calm was Kimi on the radio? Imagine your wheel coming off, going at like 100 and something miles an hour, and just being like, my front right has come off.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've been driving on a country road and got a puncture going 30 mile an hour and absolutely shit me pants. You know what I mean? He's going about like 100 and something, and he's like, my wheel, it's gone bye-bye, I need to go.
He so calmly pulls the car over as well, like really safely to the side, which is crazy. Like, he didn't even have all of his wheels.
Right. Yeah.
It's like indicating and everything, doing it as safe as possible.
But his hat his lights on.
Yeah, he's got that triangle out of his boot by his spare wheel and put it down so that everyone can see him.
Well, that was what brought out the last safety car, and the safety car that then caused the highlight of the race, I think, for many people. It was because it was interesting when the safety car first came out. Albon gave Perez back a position because he thought Perez was ahead when the safety car came on. That was undecided that actually it was the other way around. Red Bull made the decision to switch Albon back with Perez to be behind Hamilton.
I don't know why I'm waving at you like you can see me, because you can't. But like to jump in there, a little interesting thing before that was the Lando Norris and Perez. Was it Perez? I think it was Perez. The pit release. The pit release.
Oh, the pit release. Yeah.
That was very interesting.
They were with each other quite a lot in this race, weren't they?
Yeah. So that was very interesting. And then the fact that Perez tried to steal that space back, even though he knew he lost it. And then the F1 control people, my brain's going numb, the F1 control people didn't tell Racing Point that they were giving Albon that thing back. So you could hear Perez going, what's going on? Why is he overtook me?
Yeah.
So
yeah, very interesting. And obviously that was eventually that put Hamilton and Albon next to each other for the restart. Interestingly, Mercedes decided not to repit Hamilton and Bottas. And I think that was a very weird decision. They could have put him in on the softs, they'd have been fine. But bless you. But yeah, I think as soon as Red Bull pitted Albon onto those softs, he was just way ahead. He was going straight for that win, and he definitely could have done it. Those Mercedes were gone on those medium tyres, and you saw how much pace he had straight after the restart of the second safety car. He was all over the back of Hamilton. And then they came to the corner, turn 4. Albon had the newer, fresher, grippier softs. The mediums were old, and that. Should it have been a win for Albon? Should he have got round Hamilton there? Do you think Hamilton should have given him a bit more room?
Let me find the message that I sent to you when it happened, because I think it was just, wait, where's it at? Hold on, bear with. 30 seconds, 29 seconds, 28 seconds. Still can't find it.
It was very controversial, wasn't it? There was a lot of mixed opinions as to whether Hamilton shouldn't have been penalised for it and it was just a racing incident, or whether he should have been penalised for it because it wasn't a racing incident. I think it was very clear to me, at least, that Albon definitely had the jump on him going around that corner, and Hamilton, I don't know, maybe he was just trying to defend his position. It was probably completely accidental, but I mean, it caused Albon to lose his race, really. So,
well, my message exchange with Tom was, mate, ... Hopefully Lando gets to the podium now, kissy face, and then Lewis is a prick.
Yeah, I think for Lewis, I think going into that corner, the problem with turn 4 is it's so long. There's not really an entry or an exit. It's kind of just one big corner. And going into the corner, Hamilton was ahead, but very quickly Albon was ahead. He had the grip. He could go around the outside more on those soft tyres. And I think that was happening. And Albon was on the outside. Albon couldn't have done anything more in that situation. I think Albon is definitely not to blame. He was making a very good move there. Whether it's a racing incident or not, maybe is up for discussion. But Hamilton, I think, could very easily have lifted off a bit, pulled back, and then got in a bit tighter on that corner. We saw other drivers do that in that race, and the 6-time world champion didn't. I think that says a lot about Hamilton, and maybe the fact if the reason he is a 6-time world champion is because he doesn't lift off. But should he have done that? It is a very controversial question. Personally, I think Hamilton deserved the penalty. I think he should have lifted off. He should have given Albon the position. He could have fought back. There was 3 DRS, zones on that track. Albon deserved at least a podium. He deserved at least 3rd in this race. His first podium in Formula 1. He should have got it, but it wasn't to be, was it?
Not at all. Another quick little thing about the race as well. Crofty, he was on form until he saw an orange car, and then he just kept calling the orange car Sainz, even though it was Norris. Norris was pulling off amazing moves to get past Perez, but he's like, Sainz and Perez are battling. I'm like, no, they're not, Crofty. It is definitely Lando, and you're doing my head in because this is really exciting, but I can't stop thinking that it's Lando.
Let's talk about that, actually, because there was a little bit of a battle between Lando and Sainz, and I think Lando properly showed, look, mate, I know last year I may have been the rookie. You were the man that had this team, in your hands. This year, I'm not letting you push me around.
Lando's attitude was very much like, well, you're fucking off at the end of the season, so I'm not giving you anything. Which is as pally as they are, which they still are, obviously. They haven't just fallen out. But Lando's like, look, I need to show that I can actually race. And when he squeezed Sainz off the track, well, not squeezed him off, but you know what I mean? Like when he made Sainz go too wide and essentially go off the track, that was just Lando being like, this is my team now.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Lando's in that position as well where he's got to start dominating, coming in with not the podiums, but the high positions. Because he's got Daniel Ricciardo as his teammate next year.
Yeah.
And Lando doesn't want to get overlooked by Ricciardo.
I think Lando even is really going to have to prove to Daniel, Lando's going to say, look, this is my team. I've been here since I was 16 years old. This is where I've grown up. I came through F2 with them. I came through F1 into F1 with them. This is my team. I rule this team, and that's what you got to, because very easily Ricciardo's a race winner. He's a much more experienced teammate. He's going to come into that team and kind of take the reins of it, if you will. But Lando can't let that happen, and I think he knows that. No one has to tell him that.
Lando's attitude needs to be, "This is my house. You're just renting a room from me." That needs to be Lando's attitude when Ricciardo comes, and hopefully it is that attitude. And hopefully we see, as much as I'm a fan of Ricciardo, hopefully we see Lando just dominating Ricciardo.
Well, I think Lando definitely was my driver of the weekend this weekend. He did absolute bits. He was on it in qualifying. He was on it all race long. Let's talk about that last lap actually from Lando. Interestingly, he said in an interview with Sky afterwards, he didn't even know Lewis had a penalty.
No.
McLaren just got on the radio and said, "Just do. I think we got a fastest lap in the bag, mate. Go for it." He absolutely bombed it, and then at the end said, "Yeah, you're within 5 seconds of Hamilton, and he's got a penalty. You're in P3, mate." And
so
wow,
I had it on the TV. Obviously, massive McLaren fan, as you can tell. I had it on the TV. Had Lando's score and timing and stuff up on my phone while watching it on the TV. I was like, "He set a purple sector 1. He set a purple sector 2. Oh my word, he's gonna do it!" And then when Crofty was like, "Get your calculators out because this will be close," I was like, in my head, I was like, "Well, there's 3 tenths there and 2 tenths there, and then it's minus 1 tenth, and I think he's done it."
Well, it came up with the graphic as he was coming through the final sector. It was like counted down. It was like 5.1, 5.0, 4.9, 4.8.
I think it finished on 4.7, and then that's when I just started going berserk. And then I went berserk, stopped, and then I heard Crofty go, "Lando's got his podium," and I was like, "Yeah!"
When he's on the cooldown lap, McLaren released the team radio, and they have to say to him, "Remember to stay out. Don't come into the pits. Go out to the pit. Go out to the start finish straight. You're on the podium." Like he's so used to coming straight in the pits.
What's quite funny about that as well is that Bottas just and so touches the one, gets his car just and so to it. Obviously, Lando
he just drives straight through it,
wipes it out. He's like, "Sorry, mate. Not used to doing this."
Was definitely a very, very good race, and definitely a way I'm excited to start the season, and I hope it continues like this. I'm very interested to see what happens next week, and we'll get onto that in a minute, talking about next week and what we think might happen with that. But first, I want to ask you guys if you can just give me a quick driver of the weekend. Who are you saying? I'm saying Norris, 100%.
It's got to be Lando. As a McLaren fan, it's got to be Lando.
Really?
I don't know. My driver of the weekend would probably be Leclerc. I think he did really well to get his car on the podium at all. So
I think that's very fair. I think, to be fair, that everyone on that podium deserved to be there. Bottas put in a great race and a great qualifying. Leclerc dragged that thing from God knows where to get there, and obviously Lando. We don't need to talk for Lando. We've already said enough.
Just real quick,
lot of people.
I'm sick of the F1 fans voting for people who they think's been slightly hard done by for driver of the day, because I noticed that Albon won driver of the day.
To be honest, I think if Albon hadn't have crashed out, he would have deserved it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. He didn't end up finishing the race. Well, I understand that he's going to be upset. I understand that you want to give him a little big up. But then when you've got someone like Norris who's just come through and got his first ever podium, he kind of deserves it a little bit more.
At the same time, though, you don't know when that Driver of the Day award was voted for. It could have been when he was still in the race. At which point I think he was Driver of the Day.
Yeah, I think another thing as well about the Driver of the Day is that it was so split between so many people. Albon actually only had 15% of the votes for Driver of the Day, and that's what gave it to him. So everyone was really undecided about who should be Driver of the Day on that race, and I think a lot of people deserved it too.
What do we think? Just like a little discussion point. What do we think of if they made Driver of the Day a point? So like the fastest lap, you now get a point. Would that make drivers be a little bit more risky? And you see more manoeuvres and more to try and get the driver of the day, because you want to entertain people to get voted driver of the day, essentially.
Yeah, I think the only issue with that would be that you would get fans from certain teams who would sometimes vote for people like Albon, would only vote for their favourite person on that team.
True.
And I think that could be
a lot of bias.
Could be really hard, because you can't get rid of the bias from fans who are dedicated to one person, you know.
Well, if it happens, I reckon the whole of Britain will come together and give George Russell 8 points. That's what I'm saying.
Let's hope so. Right, so next weekend we're back in Austria. Very exciting. It's Styria, for the Styrian GP. They're not calling it the Austrian GP2.
Because that's too confusing.
That's too confusing. So what do we think is going to happen? They've got all the data from this weekend, and I reckon that's going to make a big difference next weekend. What are we thinking for the results? You go first.
I reckon that Mercedes will still have a little lingering fault going on. I reckon there'll still be something not 100% with the car, and they'll realise it during the race. Like all the other Mercedes units were kind of braking and stuff during the race as well. Like we didn't really talk about that much, but the Mercedes power units weren't the best this race. And I reckon that the two actual Mercedes will have some kind of problem potentially. However, I can see it finishing either Verstappen Albon or Albon Verstappen 1-2. I think it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2, and I reckon you're going to have Leclerc proper. I either think it's going to be a Mercedes or Charles Leclerc in that third position. I genuinely do think though it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2. I don't think that McLaren are going to have the dizzying heights of this last race. I reckon we'll be lucky to get 7th.
So you think Red Bull are going to come back for redemption next weekend?
100%. 100%. Red Bull looked like they were going to take the race anyways. 100%.
What do you think about pole position? Who's going to get pole?
I still reckon that'll be Lewis or Bottas.
Okay. Ruth?
I think we're going to have Bottas first, Verstappen, Albon, and then I think Norris is going to be challenging for third still.
Where's Lewis going to finish?
I really think he will be. I think Lewis isn't going to finish. I think he's going to have a DNF.
Oh, interesting. Ooh. Okay. Get down to the bookies.
Okay.
I think he's really going to be. I think he's really going to be pushing himself and making a lot of mistakes, and I think that's going to cost him a lot. Maybe it costs him the whole race.
Who do you think for pole?
Bottas.
You think Bottas for pole?
I think Bottas.
I think my top three, I'm going to say, I think Verstappen is going to be wanting to come back with a vengeance. He's going to want that win. You know, he's had it for the past 3 years. He's not going to want to miss it again here. Second place, I reckon Hamilton. Third place, Bottas. That's my prediction. Bless you again.
I reckon they should do. I reckon they should still stay on the alternate strategy though. I reckon they should put Verstappen on the right. Come on, you can beat Lewis and Bottas on this strategy, and Albon on the look. When they start to have a little bit of an issue, or when something happens, you're coming into the pits, you're shoving the softs on, and you're gonna win the race, mate.
I think the thing that will be interesting next week is that no one's gonna have a strategic advantage. They've already run the race. They know what tyres can go where. They know how long they can go on those tyres.
They know that the curbs are little
advantage isn't there. Yeah.
They know that the curbs are proper being little bitches. They know that. So they don't stay off the curbs as much.
Yeah.
So
it'll be a very interesting race, and of course we will be back again to review it next week. But I think for now, that is the end of the F1 Review podcast for this week. Season 1, Episode 3, the first race of the season. 4 months after the last episode, we finally got round to the start of F1.
We finally made an F1 podcast that is at the start of a season.
Yeah.
I never thought it was going to happen.
It was never going to happen.
We were just going to have to talk about car designs for the next 6 months.
It feels like
we didn't mention that this episode. We didn't mention that this episode. That the Mercedes Black Lives Matter thing. The car being black. It looked very nice black.
It does look very nice. Williams livery as well. Looks very nice. Yep. Well, we can touch on that more next week. So I've been Tom.
I've been Ruth.
I've been Ruth as well. I've been Ruth.
Well, thank you very much for watching this episode of the F1 Rearview. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Farewell.